trolling caps lock, and the principles of staged versus non-staged payloads, this time on Hack 5. For Hack 5, I'm Darren Kitchen, taking a look at the caps troll payload by Atomiczsec. This is a payload for the USB Rubber Ducky that attacks Windows targets with a little bit of PowerShell that will toggle the caps lock key on and off at regular intervals. It's just a wonderful, innocuous prank that you can pull on your friends, and it's a great example of cool things that we can do. So let's take a look. Here in Payload Hub, we're taking a look at the caps lock troll payload, and we can dig right in to the code on GitHub. And the reason that I bring this up is because really this is a payload that is a perfect example of a staged payload. And if you've followed along in the online course or have gotten yourself a copy of the textbook, you'll probably know that a staged payload is just one that consists of a stager and one or more additional stages. Think of it like the Atlas V going to space, where it kind of jettisons some stuff along the way. And typically all of those other stages are hosted on external resources. And that could be anything from, well, mass storage, you know, the flash drive that is the USB Rubber Ducky when you use the attack mode storage, or a network resource. So think of like downloading a file over the internet. And the stager in this case is what kind of sets up the payload. Usually it just downloads a external resource and then executes it. But there's many different ways that staged payloads can run. And if we go ahead and take a look at line 15 of our payload.txt file here, we'll see that what happens is, you know, we open the Windows Run dialog and we inject this little bit of PowerShell right into that dialog, and it actually downloads the file being, you know, whatever is in this constant target URL, in this case example.com, so, you know, this is, you know, find and replace that, and it's going to go ahead and execute it. And this can be a really handy technique, especially if you have a very large and rather complex payload. Just a ton of instructions that might take a long time to type out, even with the speed of the USB Rubber Ducky. And so you can either store it on mass storage, like I said, or over the internet. That said, the staged payload approach does come with a couple of drawbacks. First of all, if the target, say, isn't connected to the internet and we're trying to download a file from it, then it's not going to work, right? The external resource isn't going to be available. And then second, well, because we're relying on an external resource that requires, you know, transiting the perimeter firewall, in some corporate environments, that's just going to be blocked, preventing our payload from running at all. Or, you know, the activity may be allowed, but it will be logged and thus aiding the blue team in forensics analysis down the line. An alternative, of course, to a staged payload would be, well, a non-staged payload, sometimes called an inline payload. And, well, these, just like any other, are designed to carry out their tasks, but in a self-contained manner. So they don't rely on any external resources, no flash storage, no internet access, and because of that, they're what we would consider more robust, more resilient, and they can offer a reduction in the possibility of detection because of that, both on, you know, the target and throughout the network. They of course have their pros and cons, and we can get into different payloads where, you know, some it makes sense to do staged and others maybe not. I mean, a reverse shell is going to, for instance, use the network no matter what, right? But it really depends on the complexity of the task. And thankfully, when it comes to injecting PowerShell, specifically, there are plenty of techniques that we can use to actually shorten our scripts and kind of save the precious time that is used to inject those keystrokes, things like using aliases and the like. And what I'd like to do now is take a look at adapting this payload from Atomiczsec, because caps troll is a perfect example of a staged payload that we can pretty easily turn into a non-staged version. Let's come over here and actually take a look at the PowerShell script that is downloaded and executed here, a.ps1, that you would, I guess, host on your own personal website or something like that. And this right here, it's just 17 lines of PowerShell. It could be pretty easily adapted. In fact, we can even collapse this into a single line of PowerShell by putting semicolons between each instruction and get it down to a one-liner. And I've actually done just that. If we actually take a look at, this is the existing code, right? We've got a while loop and, all of these, we got some sleeps, tell it to sleep for 45 seconds, and then we use a little bit of PowerShell to inject the send the key caps lock, and then we sleep for 15 seconds and hit caps lock, and then sleep for 15 seconds and caps lock, and sleep for 15 seconds and caps lock, lather, rinse, repeat, and all of this is happening within a while true. Now, obviously, we can probably just shorten this all together by having it just press caps lock every 45 seconds, or every 5 seconds, or every 1 second, whatever you want. But we can also reduce this down to just a single line of code where we open PowerShell in a hidden version, and we do our little execution bypass, and then we do our while true, or while one. Okay, one is always going to be true, and we set a variable, and then we run this command, and then the semicolon right here is going to string together the next command. So we can just continue to inject command after command after command, all separated by semicolons, and Bob's your uncle. So this actually comes down to 161 characters when it's all said and done. And that's really important because we love very short PowerShell snippets. They bring so much delight because they fit inside of the Windows run dialog. You see, if I actually come over here and take a look at my Windows box and pull up GUI R, right? This little run dialog here has a character limit. It's actually 259 characters. So if we can cram our payload into 259 characters, it's going to run so much faster and more efficiently. We really prefer to inject code into the Windows run dialog because it's quick and easy to pop up. I mean, the only thing that you need to get that on screen is the keyboard combo Windows key and R, right? And it takes up very little real estate on our machine, which kind of reduces the noticeability, is that a word? And minimizes our visual footprint of our attack, I guess you could say. So let's go ahead and put all of this together in Payload Studio now that we have those understandings. So if I take a look here, I have my original payload, or Atomiczsec's original payload, and I can see that essentially what we're doing is we're delaying for 2 seconds, opening up the Windows run dialog with GUI R, injecting our PowerShell, and hitting enter. And from here, really what it's going to do is just download and execute over the internet this file which you've got hosted somewhere. So we're going to put this all into the actual payload. So I'm going to go ahead and Payload Studio, File New, and we're going to call it, I don't know, we're going to call it Fast Windows Caps Lock Blinker. And we're going to say the author, I'm Hack5 Darren, with props to Atomiczsec. The description is it's going to toggle caps lock with an inline payload. And our target is going to be Windows. And there you go. All right. So obviously attack mode hid. And of course I can omit that since it's going to default to it, but I like to put it in there. And we're going to go ahead and define how long we want that caps lock key to blink. So we're going to do define, and I'm going to call it sleep. And I like to begin my defines with a pound because then when I'm reading my code, I can tell like, oh, okay, that's a define, that's a constant in my payload. And we're going to make it 1 second, which is going to make it really fun because then, you know, our victim here is going to be typing and it's going to be like alternating, you know, caps all the time. It's cruise lock for cool. It's too much fun. So that way, anybody else using this script might want to come by and make it 15 seconds or 60 seconds or 3,600 seconds or whatever have you, depending on the kind of prank you want to do. We're also going to delay for I don't know, 2000 milliseconds, and we'll optimize that in a future episode. But suffice it to say, when we plug in our USB Rubber Ducky, it's going to wait 2 seconds before it injects any keystrokes, which is going to give our target a chance to enumerate the USB Rubber Ducky and be ready to receive those keystrokes. Then, just like the previous payload, we're going to open up the Windows Run dialog, so GUI R. We'll hold off for 500 milliseconds before injecting anything into that actual run dialog, and that's where the fun comes in. We're going to do our string, and I actually have that all typed out right here, and it's going to, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break it up. I'm going to break it up into a couple of bits, and the reason for that is because I want to now inject my sleep, right? And so when you're injecting the value of a defined constant, you actually need to have it on a new line. So I could do like string hello pound sleep, and it's not going to type hello the number 1. It's going to type hello pound sleep. However, if I do string hello and then string sleep, it's going to type in the 1 that we've defined up here. So that's a nuance with using defines. It's in the documentation. Essentially, you just want to make sure that it's on its own new line. So in this case, we're in the run dialog. I've entered my PowerShell and I've truncated the end of this here so that it ends at the point where we give it how long we want to sleep. And I'm going to go ahead and just, I've got, another turkey in the oven as it were, and I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of it in here. So I have my whole PowerShell script right here up until the point where it tells it how long to do a sleep statement in PowerShell. And then, in fact, if I just go ahead and come over here, I can word wrap this just a bit so we can see. All right, so PowerShell, new dash object, comma object, wscript shell, our $W, which we've defined over here. And then it's going to send the key caps lock, and then it's going to use the PowerShell alias sleep, which, as we know here, is an alias for start dash sleep space dash second space, so that's been reduced by just using a PowerShell alias down to sleep. And how long are we going to sleep? Well, we're going to sleep for whatever the user of the script has selected, and it's defined up here as sleep. I would probably be like choose how long you want the caps lock key to blink in seconds, or something to that effect, so that the next user using this PowerShell or using this Ducky script can go ahead and change this to whatever they want. So there you go. You may also notice that I put spaces here, like specifically. If I actually look here, I can actually end this line with a trailing space and get rid of this, and it's going to go ahead and type object space dash com object, all this stuff, and it's going to end it with a space. The reason I like to is more stylistically, because I want to specifically know that there isn't some like trailing white space, because depending on what theme you're using in Payload Studio, you may or may not see that there's an actual piece of white space, a space character right there. So I like to go ahead and just spell it out specifically. So in this case, this little bit here is our entire PowerShell, the 260-ish, 61, be a little longer if you use a longer sleep statement, but no matter what, this is going to fit within the Windows Run dialog. So at the very end of it, we literally just hit enter. And the beautiful thing about this is going to go ahead and continue to run on our target for as long as we like. So we can plug it in, it's going to inject a bit of code. Now we can unplug our USB Rubber Ducky, run away, and the caps lock key is going to continually blink. And that right there is a version of the caps troll payload that executes without any external resources. It does it by typing real quick into that run dialog. And I hope it gives you an idea of what's possible between staged and non-staged, or inline payloads, as it were. And of course, mad props to the original author, Atomiczsec. You got to check out his payloads. They're all really great. And if you want to check out this one specifically, there will be a link over to payloads.hack5.org. That's also where you can find a huge creative community of payload developers and where you can submit your own to be featured. Now, next time we're actually going to expand on this particular payload because it's a good example one and take it a few steps further to optimize it, make it a little bit more efficient. But until then, I'm going to just say, hey, for Hack 5, I'm Darren Kitchen. You can follow me at Hack5Darren. And once again, I'm reminding you to trust your technolist. Thanks for supporting Hack 5. Find all our shows, community, and pentest products at hack5.org.